What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today, and with me I have some more RPG horror discussions. I found a discussion board that basically talks about what DMs and players have done that was very video gamey of them while adding it to the TTRPG. And while most of the answers have something to do with Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate mechanics, there are some absolutely hilarious things that people have done in our games, and we're gonna go through them together. I even talk about my own things as well. But let's get to the discussion on the way. This video is gonna be a little bit different, but I think it should be fine. A little bit of a spruce up, a little bit of creative liberties for it, you know? Anyway, let's get to it. What was the worst case of player or GM applying video game logic to a TTRPG that you came across? As the title asks, time to share some experiences. Now, I'm going to start off with what I do typically, and since, you know, I'm part of the discussion already, except I'm not writing on a Reddit post. The two things I do that are video gamifying my games is fast travel and crafting. Fast travel doesn't take too long, and as long as players are just able to do decent survival rolls and have enough rations to get from one destination to the other, we can just fast track it. If they want to hunt along the way, they're more than welcome to. And occasionally they may run into a couple of things here and there along the way, but for the most part, I'm trying to get them from point A to point B as fast as possible to get the session rolling. Number two, crafting. I get in Dungeon Master's Guide, it says a certain amount of gold price and time that it takes to create a thing, but I find it boring. I like my crafting like in Final Fantasy XIV, where there's an actual skill check and you need ingredients and specific things to make, which means if you have enough ingredients to pump out 5 potions of healing and you get good rolls, you can make 5 potions of healing, which to me sounds amazing, sounds wonderful. I have like a little plugin on a Foundry. They're like, I think it's called Beaver's Crafting Module. It is so good. Lets you like collect different ingredients, do a little skill check for different substitutes and stuff like that, and then bingo bango, you'll do your skill checks and you make the item that you want to make, and it's fantastic and I love it. Crafting in D&D is kind of cool, but I just want to find a more exciting way to make it feel more dynamic and active and give players a reason to actually do stuff together and maybe even work together to craft multiple things like magical items. So without further ado, let's see what other people have done for their gamifying and video gamifying of mechanics in D&D. I have a metric ton of examples from a player that of course played a rogue that tried to rules lure each and every one of my calls that neutered his murder hobo fantasy. To him, since there were rules for stealth, everything that he did while hidden or unseen was absolutely impossible to be pinned on him. Like imagine your friend Mark, oh hi Mark, and Rogue have to get together at your place, only for the 3 of you. Mark goes to the bathroom, Rogue shortly after excuses himself, he returns a few minutes later, says goodbye and leaves. Mark doesn't come out of the bathroom, so you go to check on him and find him dead with his throat slit open. By Rogue's logic, since no one saw him do it, it would be preposterous, cheating, and metagaming to assume that he was the murderer. This level of video game logic. If guard showed a single point of IQ above, must have been the wind, it was a crap show. So those were like 3 or 4 awful sessions. This is going off of Skyrim visual logic. The little eyeball that shows that I'm sneaking is still on, so I can pick whatever sweet rolls I want. I kill whoever I want, and I come up to the guard and I say, "Speak, citizen." There gotta be a little bit of sensible logic. You can't just video gamify everything. It sounds like a really strange ruling to try to... but guards are like Skyrim guards. They didn't see me. My stealth detection symbol didn't go away. A DM created save points, where if we did not get to one before the end of the session, we lost all progress since the last. However, we could go back to a previous point at any time. The problem was he ended up pacing them hours apart for each other. It would go 2+ hours without ever seeing one for a 3-hour game window. What normally happened was we would finally get to one, look at the clock, and then just bluff out about the last hour, not wanting to put a bunch of time and effort into only have it undone. He of course got mad, and then instead of understanding the problem he was creating, he made them even more rare. And the first time we did a full 3-hour session, I did not find a single save point. Well, none of us came back next game. I also had a GM accept an argument from a player featuring the use of Mario as an example of the normal human jumping range in a game that was supposed to be authentically realistic. Your DM, I want to gooba stomp that orc. It's actually... Jesus Christ, it's actually... You know, I thought this would be more of a dry discussion, but this is actually funnier than I thought it was gonna be. Also save points. That is ridiculous. Like, okay, listen. There are moments sometimes as a group and DM and the whole party need to retcon what happened to go back to where things just turn like really sour. I understand, and it's fine to use retcons in this sort of situation as long as you do, use them constantly and use them sparingly for appropriate moments. But creating save points is bizarre. Your actions, in TTRPG, I feel like your actions should matter. Actions should have consequences. If you have a save point, we could just backtrack to what before disaster happened just to redo it all over again and re-roll your stuff. Like, play a video game at that point. Go play Baldur's Gate or Divinity Original Sin 2 or any of the TTRPG-based games that you find on Steam or GOG or anywhere. Just go play a video game if you want quick save points. It would feel like you would devalue all sort of meaning and choice and action and consequences. It just would take it away. What's the point of playing if you can just re-roll and get the best choice possible? It just, I don't know, to me it just sounds boring to put into TTRPG. A player constantly tried to apply Baldur's Gate 3 rules to the table and got mad at me when I refused his idea of fast travel with portals. They were level 4 at the time. I feel like some fast travel might be okay, but portals, maybe at a higher level. Speaking of fast travel, I never got to show this. This is the world map for my games. Actually, this is kind of the older version. Let's, yeah, there we go. This is a more up-to-date. Most players haven't got to see this yet, but I'm going to show this off eventually to show more of the world. But yeah, the world is pretty big. Getting from point A to point B is going to take a while. Large swaths of maps to travel. You got to figure out some sort of fast travel mechanics that everybody can be happy with. Otherwise, getting from point A to point B would be a nightmare. Would be way too long. I support fast travel mechanics, but maybe not with portals. Maybe portals are a little bit too advanced for now. I got a DM obsessed with the JRPGs, and his NPCs would repeat the same quotes until something new happened in the story. Really tragic. That sounds awful. Imagine coming up to a merchant and they say the same line over and over again. That would be so immersion breaking. I'm sorry, that would be extremely immersion breaking. If you want that experience, play a JRPG. Don't bring that stuff to a TTRPG game. Your NPCs are allowed to have autonomy, They're fully allowed to be like fully autonomous and have their own thoughts. I've almost killed my own PC more than once trying to search behind a powerful waterfall for secret entrance and treasure chests and being washed down a river. Actually, I don't think I've ever done that before. Not wash the player away, but put like some sort of secret behind a waterfall. I feel like I should, but also I feel like it would set a really bad standard. Every waterfall is going to be inspected until somebody gets washed away. One of my groups of typical murder hobos stole some valuable items in a city, then ran off into the desert to use said item to kill any creature they came across for an entire session, accumulating some gold. When they found out that the captain of the guard in the city had put a bounty on their head for their crimes, to their complete surprise, I might add, they decided to return to the city and pay off their own bounty. They actually expected that would solve the problem, then they would get to keep the item they stole too. According to them, that works in Red Dead Redemption. Had to explain that a bounty is usually a way of getting a hold of a person, and there are typically additional consequences for said person, such as being hanged for highway robbery. Pretty sure it works the same way in Red Dead if like a sheriff sees you and stuff. I feel like players need to just ask the DM, hey DM, does this work like in Red Dead? And just to get their answer, Because what if it does? What if it actually does? You never know until you ask. Though not in this situation, definitely not. Less serious than most things here, but in the first session a friend of mine ever ran, he blocked off a certain path by having a merchant standing there and saying his cart tipped over. He was flabbergasted when we just said we climb over the cart to go that way. I'm just trying to imagine. I want to be the fly on the wall when the DM goes, wait, you can't climb over the cart. No, don't go that way. Players can climb over things and a cart is just a cart. I'm just imagining the guy from Last Airbender. My cabbages. An old DM attempted to do the companion thing from Baldur's Gate 3. Hard to pull off when all the NPCs were unlikable and had the charisma of a wet freaking sponge. Not the worst, but I find several beginners applying the logic of MMORPG to TTRPG. Like they consider that a group of players has to have a tank, a healer, and damage dealer, or a player asking what are the options, during a dialogue with an NPC. Okay, I have that too actually. Not the dialogue part, but I have that too. I have a lot of players that played MMOs and they have that like tank, healer, DPS mentality. And that's cool to have and stuff, but it's always so hard to reinforce like, hey, you don't have to be a tank. You don't have to be a healer. You don't have to be a DPS. There's more roles you can fill in a D&D party than just tank, healer, DPS. But at the same time, it's not a bad thing. It gets players to think about the choices or whether they want to be really tanky and be like the brunt of the party to just take the damage, or be a healer that focuses primarily on making sure the party is properly aided. My favorite one is when a player needs to fight a golem and escape a lab and had 15 minutes to do so. The DM told him that a golem stands there and does nothing. The player got excited and started to describe his next move, but the DM said the golem isn't doing anything, so he hasn't ended his turn. He can't act until his turn ends. They narrated 15 minutes passing and the whole lab being blown up. Oh yeah, that was from a story, wasn't it? I think we read that story. Maybe I've seen videos on the story. I was at a table with that guy who was complete brain-rotted FPS bro. The man played a mercenary in a VTM game, so with modern gear and stuff, which would have been fine if he didn't screw around and get the party in trouble, plus random homophobia. He acted like he was in a game lobby. Bonus, he played Red Dead Redemption 2 during a session at least once. Oi, yikes. Played with a guy who only knew video games and had both never played tabletop RPGs, nor knew anything about classic superhero gaming tropes and genres. So you brought a Master Chief clone into a Champions game and didn't understand why machine gunning consuming crooks who took a bank hostage was a bad thing. Few bad rolls, and he killed a lot of civilians, and the villains surrendered out of terror. Damn, I'd surrender out of terror too. This guy is worse than us, boss. We should probably give up. An acquaintance of mine tried telling me about his completely homebrew system. I don't remember everything about it, but a lot of it sounded like it could be decent for a video game, but an absolute pain in the ass in TTRPG with multiple players. Remember a spellcasting class that had to go out and find a trainer to learn new spells, or you just wouldn't have your spells. Another one evolved needed to master spells, which meant every spell you cast has a chance to fail to go off the decrease each time you cast it until you mastered it. There's like 30 classes with multiple upgraded versions. It was pretty creative and interesting, but I would hate that as a TTRPG. It sounds like an MMO. That's what it sounds like. Confession. As a GM, I've officially instituted a house rule of when you level up, you instantly get all your health, spells, and per day abilities back, because I can't be bothered to build realistic long rest into my narrative. I could see this be creatively used for like a BBG final battle, right? Where like second phase begins and the boss just claps everybody down, reduces their health down, and then right in that perilous moment, the party gets like a spark, a breath of fresh air, like second breath kind of thing, right? And they suddenly get empowered and level up, and now third part of the fight begins or second phase begins or whatever. That would be actually a really cool mechanic. It'd be complicated as hell to do, but it'd be pretty dope. Not really a GM, but there's like 50 different YouTube short makers while the whole shtick is, hey DM, I have an idea for a character. Explains character. DM, wait, are you just a pop culture character? Quote from said character, it's never funny. Some of it can be funny, it depends on the game you're playing, but I could see why it could be a little bit annoying if you want to start off with something more original, creative. Player wanted to name every character Sephiroth, like in Final Fantasy, because that's what he calls all his characters in video games. Reminds me of Mr. Welch's things to not do in an RPG, all kinds of creative misuses and combinations of game mechanics, fantasy cliches, and real-world logic to bypass threats or just for the lulz. Other people have plenty of stories about players thinking about things with the wrong paradigm, not just video game logic. This is the opposite, but I've had a player who just tried to pull crazy crap in the past. It's entertaining and he respects it if I shut down, so I don't mind. Anyway, he came up to me one day asking if I agree that every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. Basically, you want to use a mechanic in game that lets you enter and exit the ethereal plane. And in a text, it says if you stop inside an object, you take so much force damage. You wanted to suicide on the big bad with this method. Player, hi, I'm new. I wanted to run this idea that I ripped from a game where I betrayed the party. Everyone, no, I'm not comfortable with that. Player, but it worked in Baldur's Gate 3. Please note that I haven't played Baldur's Gate 3. I just watched this happen in horror. Had a player gaslight the group into utterly unprepared and very crazy attack on a bandit leader leading outpost filled with stolen goods awaited further transport. They got the crap kicked in hard because, well, they didn't even do basic scouting or asking around, so they got surprised by snares, the amount of bandits and etc. They managed to flee the scenario and take a walk back to the village, which was essential a day march. Took longest there and restocked because they wanted to be extra sure. They asked for healing potions, which pre-established are made on demand, not really much on stock, so they further had to wait a few days to magic weapons and potions to arrive. And when they got back after like 5 days or so, the bandits were gone. and the outpost was abandoned. I had one player explain how it's metagaming the dungeon is getting emptied after the bandits knew we've been discovered, taking the cargo with them, of course. The other player shouldn't have gaslit the rest of the party to just charge ahead. Maybe some scouting, some proper smart planning, that probably would have been a really good idea. Though I don't understand how this is part of the video game logic. I guess you expect the enemies to just stay there forever until you come back and clear the dungeon, or clear the dungeon, because like in video games the dungeons just stay there forever until you come back and re-clear it again with better items. But like in TTRPGs where enemies have self-autonomy and probably want to move away if you come back again or to reshore up their defenses, they'll probably want to do that. Yeah, I could see how that is. Anyway, if you have your own moments where a video game mechanic transpired in your TTRPG game, whether it's from your DM, a player, or whatever, please feel free to let me know down in the comment section below. I would love to read some. And with that, that's going to be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales tomorrow. Bye-bye.